Following pressure from the Trump administration, the FDA has authorized emergency use of plasma treatments for coronavirus patients. Now, some people are concerned about the way that this emergency approval was given by the FDA. Some are worried that Donald Trump's pressure and the fact that he politicizes the issue is what led them to make this decision, possibly hastily. And this treatment is specifically referred to as convalescent plasma, which is created from the blood of individuals who have recovered from the coronavirus and has been used to treat other viruses such as MERS, SARS, and Ebola. There have been some promising results, but not promising enough, especially when you consider the way Donald Trump sold it over the weekend. Take a listen.
The FDA has issued an emergency use authorization, and that's such a powerful term, emergency use authorization for a treatment known as convalescent plasma. This is the only possible, and it's only made possible because of Operation Warp Speed to deliver treatments and vaccine to save lives. We're removing unnecessary barriers and delays, not by cutting corners, but by marshaling the full power of the federal government. Through this study, over 100,000 Americans have already enrolled to receive this treatment, and it has proven to reduce mortality by 35%. It's a tremendous number. Based on the science and the data, the FDA has made the independent determination that the treatment is safe and very effective.
Now, prior to the FDA agreeing to approve this for emergency use, Donald Trump repeatedly accused the agency of essentially making politicized decisions about treatment options in order to hurt him for his reelection campaign. In fact, he even accused the FDA of being part of the deep state. Here's an example.
What went into the effort for this to be approved for COVID-19, and was that holdup political in nature?
Well, I think that there might have been a holdup, but we broke the logjam over the last week, to be honest. I think that there are people in the FDA and actually in your larger department that can see things being held up and wouldn't mind so much. It's my opinion, a very strong opinion, and that's for political reasons. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with life and death. So we are being very strong and we are being very forthright, and we have got some incredible answers, and we're not going to let them be held up because every day is lives, and we're not going to let that happen.
Now, Donald Trump claims that fast tracking approval through emergency use authorization is not a political move by Trump. But remember, Trump is desperately looking for any type of solution to coronavirus, not because he's concerned about the number of people who have already died, more than 175,000 Americans. He's concerned about how this might negatively impact his chances of getting reelected. And let me remind you all that in a recent interview with Axios, when he was confronted with the fact that so many Americans had died as a result of his own incompetence, his response was, "It is what it is." So the only time I see anything politicized in regard to this virus is mostly, to be fair, mostly from the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself. I think that Democrats could actually do a better job in highlighting what a complete and utter failure Donald Trump has been in responding to this virus. But the FDA Commissioner, Ida, completely denies that they were pressured into approving the use of convalescent plasma as an emergency use treatment. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn said the decision was made in the independent judgment of experts and scientists at FDA, and that the convalescent plasma showed promising efficacy as a treatment for coronavirus patients. Those scientists have concluded that COVID-19 convalescent plasma is safe and shows promising efficacy, thereby meeting the criteria for an emergency use authorization. And look, the one positive part of this is there have been some promising results in a little over 30% of the cases. This is by no means a cure-all for coronavirus. But what makes this different from, let's say, a vaccine getting emergency approval is that there are tens of thousands of Americans who have already received this treatment during their recovery. And the costs luckily do not outweigh the benefits. So it is different from, like, let's say, a new drug or a new vaccine going on the market without any type of real rigorous testing beforehand. But I wanted to get your thoughts, Ida.
Well, my thoughts are poor American people that have to rely on the voices of the corrupt and the negotiable when it comes to their livelihood, especially those who are not affected by what happens from coronavirus and things like that, because they are in a bracket where they are protected and they have all of the protections, and they have the best doctors and access to the best healthcare, so they can afford to experiment with this stuff at the expense of the American people. And then people wonder why there is mistrust of the government from all sides, because we just don't know who to trust, and that's causing chaos amongst the people, because everybody is up in arms because people are dying, and it's the people that we know that are dying because we're not in that tax bracket. I don't trust Donald Trump, and I just don't trust any of these organizations at this point, because everything is political at this point, and it's not just Donald Trump and his administration who's doing it. It's just a shame to watch it all play out, because the people who pay the ultimate price are the ones who can't afford to live in this moment. So when they say, something like 30% of the people, when you think about those treatments and the people who have access to that, I don't know anyone who's had this treatment, and I don't know anybody who knows anybody who's had this treatment. So again, the elite class and people who have access, who have money and have power, have an opportunity to see these things first before everybody else. And then we get to be the guinea pigs. And so when I think, also Donald Trump he sucks right now, and he sucks for the last 4 years. Everybody knows that he's a failure. He read that for the first time in front of the cameras. He had never seen that paper before. He was having a difficult time reading the basic words. It's not like when he recited his haiku last month to talk about his cognitive skills. He was having difficulties with words that people win spelling bees in the 6th grade with. So he is so vested in this and how it affects the average person that he didn't even take the time to read this and familiarize himself with it before he gave it to the press and the American people. And let me just remind you, and I will continue to remind the people who follow Donald Trump, nobody insults your intelligence more than he does and his administration does. Every single time they politicize something, they say trigger words like deep state, and they hit you with the Benghazi and the emails. All they know is that you are emotionally driven by the things that he says. While he's poking at you emotionally, things are happening in the background that are affecting your livelihood every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the point that you made about how, this is something that apparently certain individuals have already had some access to. As I mentioned, convalescent plasma has already been used to treat roughly 70,000 Americans who have contracted the virus. I hadn't really heard much about this treatment beforehand. And don't get me wrong, I want this, if it's proven to be effective, I want all Americans to have access to it. But even if it is, even if they do somehow manage to conduct the medical trials that are necessary to focus on how this treatment specifically impacts coronavirus patients, once it gets approved by the FDA, is it going to be readily available to everyone in the country? With the way that our healthcare system is set up, that's highly unlikely. And so, yes, Trump is a failure. Trump is a complete and utter disaster when it comes to this virus. There's no question about it. But I think that the United States has been in a uniquely awful position to deal with a pandemic like this. And by the way, there were warnings of a mass pandemic and how ill prepared we are back in 2006 during the Bush administration, and no one did anything about it. And even as we're in the middle of this pandemic right now, even as we see tens of millions of Americans lose their jobs and the healthcare that comes along with those jobs, we don't have a single political party in this country, viable political party, that actually has a real solution to that, a feasible, robust solution. And that includes Joe Biden's campaign, keeping it real. So I do want to move on to the next video because, There was an awkward moment during Trump's press conference about this. Some of the reporters were concerned about the efficacy and also the conditions under which the FDA approved this for emergency use. Let's take a quick look at that.
In announcing this today, you said that the FDA has made the independent determination that the treatment is safe and very effective. Yet Dr. Hahn just said it was showing promising efficacy. So which of the two is correct?
Well, I think I'll let Dr. Hahn answer that question.
So under our legal authority for emergency use authorization, this is not the same as an approval, but it's an authorization and allows us to expand the access to this. And our data, we know we're going to continue to collect data. We knew that for all of our emergency use authorizations. So it's the nuances of the language around the authorization that we use in the legal aspects.
It's a promising treatment. It's not, you couldn't say it's very effective just yet.
So I would say that if you're one of those 35 out of 100 people who these data suggest or show survive as a result of it, this is pretty significant for that person and their family.
Okay. This is a very big day. It's a day we've been looking forward to. Thank you very much. Great question.
Was there pressure on you, Dr. Hahn, to authorize this? Mr. Dr. Hahn, could you answer that question?
So part of the problem with approving this for emergency use is that it essentially opens up the market to this particular treatment for coronavirus patients, making it incredibly difficult for scientists to recruit patients for their clinical trials. So there's a problem with actually proving the efficacy of this treatment for coronavirus patients. So that's one side of the story. And then you also have to consider how certain data was allegedly cherry-picked in order to prove the efficacy of this treatment for emergency use. And CNN actually had a pretty decent segment about that. Let's go to that last video.
What the studies show is that while this might work, we don't know if it works. And what the studies really show is that the Trump administration is cherry picking data to make this treatment look better than it might actually be. They chose a death rate that looked at 7 days out. After treating people, what happened 7 days out? That's okay, but why not look 30 days out? The 7-day death rate looks better. It's a better number. So they chose that one when they should have chosen the 30-day one. So let's take a look at what those actual numbers show. The Trump administration says 35% decreased death rate when you treat people with convalescent plasma early in their hospitalization versus later on. That's when you look at the 7-day death rate. When you look at the 30-day death rate, it's actually only 23.6% lower. So that is a difference. That was not pointed out by the Trump administration. They chose the better number that is less reliable. And this part is actually even more important. This death rate can be explained, this lower death rate can be explained by other factors. You don't need to be a medical genius to know that earlier treatment is always better. If these patients were getting plasma earlier, what else were they getting earlier? They were in the hospital earlier, so they were getting remdesivir, steroids, other things earlier. That could explain why they had better survival, not necessarily the plasma.
Right. So I think that's a really good explanation about how difficult it's been to prove the efficacy of this treatment, because they're relying on data that consists of patients. I mean, in America, essentially customers, but patients who are getting all sorts of treatments at the same time simultaneously. So there hasn't been like a controlled study to again prove the efficacy of this plasma treatment. This is just, I'm exhausted. It's just.
You know what's interesting, Anna, is that it's funny how when they talked about the numbers earlier on with coronavirus, only a certain number of people died, right? Only a certain number, as if that number of people was significant. Now this man is standing here and saying, I'm sure that for those 35 people and their family members, those people's lives matter. So it's funny how when the numbers are, the numbers show how incompetent they've been in addressing this, they're minimal and they mean nothing. But when they make a little bit of progress, a little inch of progress that is still not fully effective and proven, the number is it's a big deal. And that's such a play on words for the people, the American people, because I still want to know who are those people that were privileged enough to have this treatment, because we never heard about it. So of course those people matter because they probably belong to a group of people who matter to them. That is not a reflection of all of the people in America. And that is why we have this continuous problem with this elite form of thinking.
Yeah, I think you make such a great point. And one other thing that I want to just note, look, even if this treatment is somehow tested appropriately and proven to be incredibly effective, which by the way, I hope it is. I hope it is. I want there to be a solution to this pandemic, even if it helps Donald Trump politically. I mean, so many people are dying. Right. The United States accounts for about 5% of the world population. We also account for 25% of the global coronavirus deaths. We are uniquely terrible in how we've responded to this. And again, I think it has to do with the way this country has been set up. And it's been compounded by an absolutely tragic, incompetent, horrible, self-interested president. But even if it gets proven, keep in mind that Donald Trump has put out so much misinformation that there's a great deal of distrust toward what he says, right? And so like if you look at the list of things that he has pushed for during these press conferences, he was, first of all, late on masks, we all know that. He promoted hydroxychloroquine, claimed that he was taking it. Of course, I don't believe him for 1 minute. Floated the idea of bleach or disinfectant injections, UV light under the skin, alien DNA. Okay, well, this crazy woman suggested alien DNA, demon semen. There was the My Pillow guys plant extract, and the numbers are really high. I know earlier I said more than 175,000 Americans have died, but I mean that was the number that I saw yesterday. So every day we have more than 1,000 people dying in this country as a result of how we have responded to the pandemic. And we need to make sure that we don't approve certain drugs or certain treatments based on Trump's political pressure. We need people who are willing to stand up to him. And unfortunately, I think that he does have some impact on how the FDA chose to approve this particular treatment for emergency use.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.